Hey everyone, welcome back to KC3D Sparks. Today we're going to be creating a sacrificial altar for this area over here, because last week we went ahead and made some benches, so I thought it'd be cool to just kind of stick with this room for a second. First thing you want to do is make sure that your scene tab, you have the unit of measure that you'll be wanting to work with. I will be working in inches, and I changed the scale of my grid floor to 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to hop over to this new layer. And we're just going to do Shift A, Mesh, and Cube. So first off, it starts at 6 inches, which is a little large. We're just going to kind of rough out the size that we kind of want. So for Z, I'm just going to put 0.5 inches for now. For Y, I'm going to put probably just 1 inch. And for X, we'll do 2. And that's just kind of like a rough estimate of how big it will be once we're done. It'll probably be a little bit taller than this, but doesn't matter. We'll just size it overall once it is in the dungeon itself. So tabbed into edit mode, and what I'm gonna do is actually hit A to deselect everything, Z for wireframe view, B for border select, and I'm just gonna pull this up. And this is gonna be kind of like our stone tabletop, and then we can extrude from there. So I want this to be pretty thick because I want it to look like, you know, this stone slab was laid over the other stone pieces, kind of like it was assembled. So I'm going to do E to extrude again. I'm just going to hit Z to get out of wireframe view and Control 7 to look at the bottom of it. So we'll just hit S. And I think I would like the stand itself to be about that size compared to the table. You know, still pretty thick. E to extrude and pull that down to about where that 1/2 inch line was. Now for mine, because some of the details that we're gonna do is if we tab out of edit mode real quick so we can go back and look at our dungeon. A couple videos ago, we went ahead and made this seal essentially. So I wanted to kind of use this pentagram star again. I'll show you how to make one, but I'll probably copy over the one we used for this so it's the same size and everything, or the same exact design. But I'll show you how to make that just in case you didn't watch that video. So I'm going to focus back in on this. So once we have that star inlaid on top, what we can do is add in 5 kind of like ravines, so that way they will lead to collection pots for the blood themselves, is kind of how I was envisioning it. So if we do E to extrude again, and we're just going to size that way out. So I'm going to go into top view, and that should be thick enough. You could do S and Y a little bit if you wanted this part to be more square, but I like the imitating rectangles, so I'm going to leave it. I'll do E to extrude again, and I'm going to have this part pretty thick, so it's kind of a step up for any of the NPCs or PCs who have to get on here. Now for me, there's some details that I want to add, but I'll go over some additional details that you could do as well. So basically, if you wanted, you could certainly just add a subdivision surface modifier, or you could, let's say you wanted to switch to face select. We'll grab this loop, do Control B for bevel. So we just get a nice bevel there. And I'm going to do the same to this, which I think I'm going to do rather than doing the subdivision surface modifier. The only thing I want to make sure of is the bottom stays flat. So I'm going to switch back to vertex select mode and do SZ0 to the bottom, and then I'm just going to pull that back down to match that grid line. So you could certainly do that. I'm going to go ahead and just tab out of edit mode and show you guys. Let's go ahead and rename this to altar. So once we have that basic shape that you're happy with, we can focus on detailing. So of course you could go into sculpt mode, and you could start making this actually look like more stone. So you know, you could use your sculpt draw, maybe some smoothing if you get a little too crazy, and thumb would be some fun brushes to play around with. Just don't forget to, you're probably going to want to check this box so that way it adds in geometry for you. So I'm just gonna undo that because I don't want that. I'm not going to sculpt. So those are just a couple little options that you could feel free to do. So for me though, I'm gonna go ahead and start off with the star. So I'm just gonna go into top view, do Shift A, and to do a star, what you would want to do is mesh and circle and change this down to 10 points. From there, I'm going to scooch it over, tab into edit mode, and grab every other point and size that in until you get the star shape that you're happy with. So let's just say there. Now what I'm going to do is do Alt right click, Shift D to duplicate it. I'm just going to right click so it stays in the same spot, size that in, and then what I'll do is grab each of the actual points, hit X, and dissolve vertices so it changes to that pentagon shape. Then after that, what you'll want to do is just grab that loop again, hit E to extrude, and size that in to where you would want your thickness to be, which I think I'd want about there, maybe a little thicker. And then what you'll want to go ahead and do is just face these off. So grab your points, hit F for face. There may be an easier way to do this. This is just what I found easiest. Then what you'll want to do is go ahead, grab the two opposing points on the star and just hit J. And do that to each. Just hit J. Switch to face select. I'll go ahead, select each of the points, hit X, faces, and you have your star. So you can just select everything. You're gonna go into side view, hit E to extrude. I'm gonna just pull that down just like that. But like I said, I want to go ahead and use the same star that I used for the seal. So I'm just going to delete this and go over, I think it was over here, yes. So I'm going to grab this star and just move that to this layer so that way I can make sure that it is the same exact shape. Go ahead and size this down. I'm going to change to wireframe view. I do want to go ahead and rotate this so that way we have our point. So it should be, no, just go ahead and rotate this to be like that. And just size that in. Actually, what would be easier is if we grabbed our table, rotated this 90, that'll work easier. There we go. Size that down, just like that. Go into side view, pull that up. So there is our cutout. Now to make sure it's the right depth, we'll go ahead, go into wireframe view. Yeah, I want it to be about halfway through the actual thing, through the actual table. So that works out nicely. Now to add in the little cutouts, so that way the blood would actually run into little pots or something, we'll do Shift A. I'm going to do a cylinder. And you could do a cube if you'd want it less round, you just want it like a boxy cutout. Either one will work fine. I'm going to do S and Shift Z to just thin that out. I'm going to go into the right view, do rotate 90 degrees, go into top view, grab this. I'm going to go back into wireframe view, rotate it to kind of match the angle of our point here. Size it in again. And we just kind of play with this until we get it the direction we want. And then of course, make sure you pull it up. And you would want it to be further than the actual star itself. So if it's too low, our cutout might look a little awkward, so might grab both, pull them both up. There we go. Now I'm just going to grab this one, hit Shift D to duplicate that so it's the same size. Grab that, rotate it to match this one to be like that. Shift D. Shift D. That should be okay. So let's go ahead and test it out to make sure it's how we want it to look. So let's do add modifier Boolean difference. But first you want to go ahead, select everything with A, and you want to do Control A, rotation and scale, and also location. So we'll do difference. Let's do the star first. So we'll just hide that, make sure it cuts out. Perfect. I'm just going to go ahead and apply it. And then we can add, 5 more. So difference, just copy that. And we'll do each cylinder. Hide them, make sure everything looks good, which it does. But of course, make sure it's lined up exactly how you want it, because you can still do tweaks at this point, which as you can see, these two here are pretty off. So this is a nice check that you can do. So which cylinder, I want to change this one probably, because I'm pretty happy with the way this one looks. So let's, grab that and rotate it. Okay. Much better. So that, once you get your lines pretty much how you want them, go ahead and you can apply your modifiers. Perfect. So it's probably pretty dramatic. You could probably have smaller cutouts if you want, but since it's going to be pretty small to print out anyway, I'm fine with how large they are. So for our collection pots, what we want to do is do mesh, and I usually like to start with a circle for a collection pot, and I'm gonna put this back up to 20 instead, because I don't want to have to do a subdivision surface modifier or anything, since this is pretty basic. So this is still circular enough. Once it's shrunken down to be printed, it will be plenty of vertices. So tab into edit mode, and I'm gonna do vertex select mode. I'm gonna do E to extrude, just hit escape, Alt M at center. Grab our loop, hit E to extrude, and pull that up. All right, so for the collection pots, let's do a little base, do E to extrude, size that out, pull it up, E to extrude, pull that up because I want those to be the same size, E to extrude, size that in, E to extrude, pull that up. Now the reason I left those the same is what I can do now is do Control R, size that out, and I know that these two loops are the same size. I know these two loops are the same size, so I can do Control R, size this out, maybe drop it down, Control R, size this out, so we get that nice pretty even shape, and we can just mess it up with the other loops. So Control R, E to extrude, size that in, go into wireframe view, hit E to extrude again, just pull that down to right past our lip here, E to extrude, size that out, pull it down, and I usually like to make it kind of parallel here. So E to extrude, pull down, size out, E to extrude, size down, size in, E to extrude one more time, size in, E to extrude, Alt M at center. There is our basic pot shape. Of course, you guys can do whatever shape you would like. If you'd want something thinner, or whatever you'd like, but that's the usual. Let's go ahead and change that to pot. Usual technique that I like to use for creating easy pots like that, or vases or anything like that. So size that down, and we'll just go ahead and move these around. So first things first, this is really large. I'm just going to do about this size, and the base, you'll notice that it's going to be a little bit tricky to get that to pop above. So what we can do is tab back into edit mode, grab this center face here, there we go, and this loop, dang it, go into side view again. We'll just hit E to extrude and pull that down, so that way when we're out here we can just have that rest just like that, and there's plenty of space for our objects to attach with the Boolean modifier. So we'll just finagle it a little bit. So I'm gonna go into wireframe view, make sure that our tabletop line and the vase center line match up. So I'll just pull this out just like this, so that way it's nice and put. So Shift D, we'll just pull that up to be right about there. Shift D, actually what we can do, undo that, grab both of them, Shift D, pull that out, go back into wireframe view so we can look at where our lines are, just like that. Grab the one, do Shift D, pull that up to here, pull that over, and pull that to where the lines meet. Perfect. So we have our collection pots all set, and select everything, Control A, rotation, scale, and location. So have the altar selected, go up to Boolean, union, yes, union this time, and we're gonna need 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And go ahead and select all your pots. And I'm just gonna hide them all, make sure they all stay nice and put. Yes, they did. So go ahead and apply. Perfect. Tab into edit mode, make sure everything looks right. Perfect. There's nothing extra. It applied seamlessly. Or, you know what I mean. Anyway, so there is the basics of it. So you could take this one into sculpt mode if you're interested, so that way everything kind of has that sculpting, or kind of sculpting stone texture thing, so we could kind of modify these, make them a little bit rougher, smooth out those edges if you're interested, anything like that. But I would recommend duplicating the whole thing, so that way you have a base to go back to in case if you go too far and you can't back up and it's just not what you wanted. Always make sure you have a duplicate to step back on. It makes life so much easier. So from this duplicate also, you could, let's say you wanted a line of skulls or something surrounding it, or something like of that nature. You could of course sculpt a skull, but we don't have time for that today. So what I'm going to do is just import one that I downloaded from Thingiverse. So I'll put a link down below for which one I downloaded. It's called Celtic Skull, but I just saved it to my desktop real quick. So all I want to do is do import STL, go to desktop, Celtic Skull, files. It's right in there for me. So it's going to take a second to import because this is very, very detailed. It's a very large sculpt, so it's really, really good though. So I'll put a link down below. Like I said, woof, it's so large. I'm going to size that just like that, zoom in on it. But I liked all the decoration that it had. Thought it was really nice. And pull that out. Size it down. Now our altar is probably going to look pretty pathetic in comparison to this skull, so you might want something less detailed, or you just want to add way more detail to your altar. But honestly, I'm betting once it's this size, all of these Celtic designs are not going to show up. So I'm not going to personally worry about it too much. I just need to make sure that it's level with that. Okay, so once we kind of have that placement, I'm going to have to go into top view. I'm going to pull it down here actually. We'll do an array modifier. And right now it's going that way. So we want to make sure it's not on X. We want to do Y to change that up. We'll do constant offset. We're gonna need to crank this up. Oh, it's going backwards though. So, okay, so we'll pull this down here. Now, since this is such a dense mesh, it's gonna take a minute to get all these skulls. This is probably a bad choice, honestly. But as you can see, once you get that line of skulls all set, you can just apply it, do the Boolean modifier to your altar still, and that would honestly look really cool. I'm just going to hide this modifier though, because I probably need to pick something less dense, because if you notice, if you tab into edit mode, it's going to take a second. There we go. And those vertices are so dense. That's why I usually don't do sculpt mode, just because you can't control it as easily. But yeah, so we'll probably just go ahead and delete this skull. Oops, not in edit mode though, because that won't work. So let's just go ahead and delete that, but at least you guys can see, okay, you can add some really cool details with just some skulls that you can download for free off of Thingiverse, or make one yourself. Just make sure it's solid and all the pieces are connected and you can actually attach it to your altar, or if you want it to be separate, that's cool too. That kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is actually just leave it as is. I know it's not very detailed, but I just gave you plenty of options for how you can do details on your own. So we're just going to go ahead and move this to the first layer. Move that. And I do want it facing this orientation. I do need to move that down. Do more like that. It's honestly not as thick of a step as I thought it was going to be. I'd almost rather tab into edit mode real quick. Deselect that, border select the bottom, and pull this step down. I'd rather it be more like that, so it's really raised. Yep, I like that better. And I'm gonna change this room up real quick, so I'm just gonna cut to that. I will be right back. So now that I fixed that up real quick, I got rid of that empty space just so our room was a little bit bigger. This is not quite the size I want to be. So if you'll notice, it's taking up just a little bit of that square, and that's a little bit awkward to me. So I'm gonna see what happens when I try just squishing it. So if we do S and Y, just like that, push that up. Yeah, that does not really affect the shape that much. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So now that we have our altar all set, we are done. If you have any questions or requests or anything like that, be sure to let me know. And also, if you needed more ideas for what other details that you could add into here, just, you know, like I said, feel free to pop those in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next week.